Right now, you're watching me. But if you were to catch your reflection in the black of your phone screen, your face would change. Your jaw would relax, your eyes would sharpen, your posture would shift. You're doing it right now, or you're trying very hard not to. The moment you become the observer, you stop being just yourself and start being an object to be seen. And here's the unsettling part. The person watching you is you. Watch what just happened. You caught yourself in a mirror, and before you had time to think about it, your face changed. Your posture came back a little. Your expression rearranged itself into something more presentable. You didn't decide to do that. It just happened, the moment you realized you were being looked at. Here's the strange part. The person doing the looking was you. That tiny, automatic flicker, the adjustment you make for an audience of exactly one, is small enough to ignore. But it's not an isolated glitch. It's a clue. It points to something that runs underneath almost everything you think of as your personality, your identity, your sense of who you are. In physics, there's a well-known idea called the observer effect, the notion that measuring a system can change the system you're measuring. I want to be upfront. That's a claim about very small particles, and it gets stretched into nonsense when people apply it to consciousness. I'm not doing that here. It's just a useful starting metaphor, because something structurally similar happens to you, constantly, with nothing quantum about it. Every time you turn your attention inward, journaling, therapy, posting online, or just quietly noticing I'm anxious right now, you're not neutrally checking in on a fixed self that was sitting there, waiting to be read accurately. You're altering it in the act of looking. Self-awareness isn't a window onto a truth that was always there. It's closer to a hand reshaping clay while insisting it's only tracing a shape that already existed. Over the next few minutes, I want to trace this through 4 places it shows up: the mirror, other people, the crowd, and the rare moments the watching stops entirely. Start small. This happens to almost everyone, dozens of times a day, and it's so automatic you probably don't register it as strange. You catch your reflection, and a second self switches on, the one managing how the first self looks. Adjust the posture. Soften the face. Check the hair. Ask yourself, which one is the real you? The person walking down the street thinking about their day, or the person who appears the instant a mirror shows up? Most people would say the first one is the authentic version, and the second is interference, noise layered on top of a true signal. That assumes a version of you exists independent of being seen, sitting underneath all the adjustments, waiting to be revealed once you stop performing. What if that's backward? What if the watching is part of what generates the self in the first place? Not noise on top of the signal, but part of how the signal gets made. To see how deep this goes, it helps to go back to the very first mirror you ever really looked into. The psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan noticed something specific about this moment in early childhood, somewhere between 6 and 18 months old, when an infant first recognizes their own reflection as themselves. He called it the mirror stage, and it's stranger than it sounds. Before that moment, an infant experiences their own body as fragmented, flailing limbs, nothing yet feeling like a unified thing under central control. Then they see themselves in a mirror for the first time. Whole, coordinated, moving as one. Something in the child locks onto that image with delight and adopts it as me, even though it's more put together than the chaotic experience of actually being that body. Lacan called this a misrecognition. The foundational moment of having a self is built on a gap between a polished image and the messier reality behind it. You don't first have a self and then find a picture of it. You find the picture first, and spend the rest of your life measuring yourself against it. If that's true at the very beginning, before language, before anyone's opinion of you has had time to land, then the real self sitting untouched beneath observation starts to look less like a hidden truth and more like a story you were handed in the crib. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre had a name for what happens next, once other people enter the picture. He described a version of yourself that only exists when you know you're being observed, being for others. The instant you become aware of another person's gaze, you don't just continue being yourself while someone happens to watch. You become aware of yourself as an object, the way they might see you, and that awareness reshapes your experience of being you, from the inside, in real time. Here's the part that matters most. You don't need another person in the room for this to happen. You carry an internal audience everywhere. Some part of your mind is almost always watching the rest of your mind, evaluating it, adjusting it. That was embarrassing. That went well. Don't say that out loud. The sociologist Erving Goffman studied something adjacent. How people manage impressions constantly, performing different versions of themselves for different audiences. One at work, another with old friends. What makes this uncomfortable is that the performance doesn't fully switch off even alone. The inner audience doesn't clock out. It just gets smaller and quieter. So when you try to just be yourself, you're not stepping into some pure, unwatched space. You're switching to a smaller, more private audience. One made entirely of you, still watching, still adjusting. Now scale that up. If a single mirror can change your posture, imagine what happens when the mirror is public, permanent, and keeps score. There's an old piece of architecture worth knowing about. The Panopticon, a prison design where a single central watchtower can see into every cell, but prisoners can never tell whether it's actually staffed. The genius of the design is that prisoners start behaving as though they're always watched, because they can't rule it out. Eventually, they don't need a guard in the tower at all. They've installed the guard inside themselves. The philosopher Michel Foucault used this as a metaphor for how modern institutions get people to discipline themselves simply by making surveillance possible and unpredictable. Social media didn't invent self-consciousness. Sartre and Goffman were writing decades earlier. But it built something close to a panopticon that fits in your pocket. Every post is self-observation performed for an audience that can respond with a number at any hour. You don't know exactly who's watching, so you behave as if the tower is always occupied. The loop tightens further. You don't just observe yourself and then decide what to share. Increasingly, you observe yourself through the lens of what would be shareable, filtering experience for its documentary value before you've finished having it. A sunset stops being just a sunset the moment part of you is drafting the caption. This is the mirror mechanism from the beginning, industrialized. The adjustment isn't just your posture anymore. It's your opinions, your grief, your relationships. The same reflex that made you tuck your hair back in a shop window, now with an audience of hundreds and a guard tower installed before you knew it was being built. There's a clinical version of this problem worth taking seriously, because it shows the mechanism can actively make things worse, not just stranger. You've probably done this. Replayed an awkward conversation at 2 in the morning, turning it over and over. The 10th replay doesn't feel like the first one. Details sharpen that you're not sure were even there. By the 15th replay, you're not remembering the conversation anymore. You're rehearsing a version your anxious attention built. Psychologists call this rumination, repeated, self-focused attention aimed at understanding a mistake or a flaw, on the assumption that enough scrutiny will finally produce clarity. The research is fairly unkind to that assumption. Rumination doesn't reliably reveal the truth underneath the distress. It tends to manufacture something worse than what actually happened, a self that becomes more flawed the longer it's stared at. This is the clearest evidence yet that the mirror isn't neutral. Looking harder at yourself doesn't guarantee you'll see more accurately. Sometimes you'll see something that didn't exist until you went looking for it. Which raises the question this whole video has been building toward. Is there any way to encounter yourself that isn't some kind of distortion? Here's the paradox that makes this whole video worth making. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent decades studying what he called flow, the state people consistently describe as the most absorbing experience available to them. Painting, climbing, playing music, losing an afternoon to something that mattered. The defining feature of flow isn't skill or difficulty. It's the disappearance of the self-monitor. The part of you that watches, narrates, and adjusts goes quiet. There's no inner audience taking notes, just the climbing, the playing, the doing. People coming out of flow often can't tell you much about how it felt, not because the experience was empty, but because no observer was running alongside it, generating commentary to report back later. That commentary is usually where the sense of self actually lives. Take it away, and there's nobody home to have been self-conscious. Worth distinguishing this from mindfulness, which also asks you to observe your own thoughts. The difference is how you're watching. Rumination watches to judge and fix. Flow doesn't watch at all. Contemplative traditions aim at something in between. Attention without the evaluating hand that reshapes the clay. The problem was never observation itself. It's the grasping, evaluative kind that leaves fingerprints on whatever it touches. Which means the moments that feel most like you are often the exact moments the watching self, the one shaping and reshaping you this whole video, briefly steps out of the room. So where does that leave the original question? Is there a real you underneath all the observation, or is the self actually made of the observing? Maybe the honest answer is that it's the wrong question. Looking for the real you underneath the watching is a bit like looking for the true shape of water underneath the container. The self isn't a fixed object that observation distorts on its way to you. It's closer to a process, something that happens, continuously, in the interplay between acting and noticing, being seen and seeing yourself. Take away all observation entirely and you don't find a purer self waiting patiently underneath. You find flow, an experience with no narrator, which is exactly why it feels less like watching your life and more like living it. That's not a nihilistic conclusion, even though it might sound like one. It's closer to an invitation. If the self is partly made by where you place your attention, then attention isn't just a passive lens, it's a tool. Not because it reveals who you already are, hidden and waiting, but because it participates in who you become next. Less time performing for the inner audience, replaying, adjusting, narrating. More time doing the thing that makes the audience forget to take notes. You are, in some real part, whatever you're doing when nobody, including you, is watching closely enough to change it. Next time you catch yourself in a mirror, notice the adjustment. Don't stop it, just notice it. That flicker is the whole video, happening in half a second, every single day of your life.